Simon, last night I immediately thought of you when it appeared on Twitter and I started reading it. Conor Benn on social media in no fewer than 1,124 words decided to release a statement in response to the World Boxing Council's verdict on his failed doping test, highlighting serious and troubling issues with the testing process. And I'm looking at you, Simon, and I know exactly where this is going to go. What does he say? Well, he says, amongst other things, this: the WBC have declared me innocent of being a drugs cheat. And then he goes on to say, I feel like the WBC statement did a disservice to my defence, which was based upon a comprehensive scientific review of the testing procedures, which set out a number of reasons why we believe the results were completely unreliable and proved beyond any reasonable doubt that I am innocent. In your eyes today, is Conor Benn totally innocent?
No.
Did he fail a drugs test and still has to argue his way out of it?
What Conor is saying, and I find myself incredibly conflicted, because I really want Conor Benn to be a success and I really want him to be everything he can be, and I really like the lad. But we're in a situation where Conor Benn seems to only like the outcomes that suit him. The WBC seemed to have acted as his defence in this. He brought a 270-page dossier detecting that the VADA process was flawed and that the equipment wasn't working and testing processes were this, and people were excluded from that. And the WBC didn't seem to like that very much, so they found a defence for him. And I've never heard anything so preposterous. They found a defence.
What do you mean they found a defence for him?
Well, they found the defence. They exonerated him, if that's what you want to call this, right? Because the burden of proof is much lower, it would seem, on the WBC, who have no jurisdiction here whatsoever, so it's almost irrelevant, and it's a tactic of Conor Benn's team to build a case for him to launch off, right? The bottom line is they've gone to them with this particular set of assertions. The WBC have looked at it and gone, well, we don't consider those to be valid, but what we do think is, did you look at your diet? Okay, so when you're bringing a case in front of a judge, it's the judge's alternative opportunity to become a defence team as well. And ultimately, what they've now suggested is that the reasons why Conor Benn shouldn't be sanctioned, not that they have any jurisdiction to sanction him anyway, and the reasons why he should be allowed back in their rankings is because there was an overindulgence in eggs. Now, with that in mind, Conor Benn is now saying that WBC have misrepresented their position, didn't quite give the statement that he and his guys wanted, and he wants to correct that. It's really, really simple, Conor. It's really, really simple. Why don't you just appear in front of the British Boxing Board of Control, stop making preposterous observations about how you're going to sue them, and follow through their guidelines and clear your name? And I cannot understand what Conor is saying about this agenda with the British Boxing. I have seen nothing privately and publicly that the British Boxing Board of Control have done to give Conor one iota of a position around unconscious bias or prejudice in terms of his position. He's been offered the opportunity to go to the British Boxing Board of Control. He's told them to do one.
Why?
Well, one can only assume that he has concerns about their processes, and maybe he feels that UKAD's testing regime gives him cause for concern. Only Conor Benn can answer that, because what he's telling you right now is there's a conspiracy theory. The British Boxing Board of no control, as I call them, right, have sat here systematically making his life difficult, taking away his earning ability. What were they supposed to do when a VADA test came back with a negative result? Positive result. They had to do something. His lawyers shut him down.
You know the dossier.
His lawyers shut the British Boxing Board of Control down.
But the dossier, Jim, Simon, just on layman's terms here, the dossier, as far as I'm aware, and reading between the lines, is basically saying that the testing process initially that found that is useless.
And the WBC didn't accept it. Now, you could look into that and say, well, maybe if we want to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, the WBC suddenly found some failings in their VADA system and would rather not that be brought to attention, so they couldn't admit that. So they've given him an alternate defence.
They deny that.
But they've given him an alternate defence.
I know, but if there is truth in that dossier about the way the lab's set up and about the contamination.
And it's the same truth that will find itself into UKAD.
That's what no, but can he not take that to the British board?
Well, he can take whatever he wants to take to them.
Of course.
But what Conor has elected to do is not to face the British. The problem for Conor is when this situation manifests himself, he was licensed by the British Boxing Board of Control, which means he can be dealt with by the British Boxing Board of Control. And unless he faces them and deals with them and stops making ridiculous observations about how he's going to sue them, he's going to find himself in a situation where he's not going to be able to fight in this country for a significant period of time. And if that's what he wants, that's what he's going to get.
What's the alternative if he does stand in front of them?
What's the alternative?
And they find him guilty, he will never fight anywhere.
No, of course he'll get banned. And then
everywhere?
No, ad infinitum, he'll be banned.
Yeah.
In every country.
And then what will happen? Yes. And then what will happen is he'll come back and redeem himself in the same way that Canelo Alvarez did, Tyson Fury did, and a whole raft of other people did.
Why would you do that to yourself then? There's no. It's completely understandable why he's not going.
Why do you think Conor is deciding at this stage in the proceedings that attack is the best line of defence?
So he can fight.
Because he says here, as for the British Boxing Board of Control, they attacked me publicly and privately during the most difficult time of my life.
But where?
Treating me with utter contempt and without any consideration for the fair process or my mental state.
But where? This is the point I can't understand, because I'm never for the establishment. I'm the last person that would be for the establishment. So I'm not for it. I want an effective governing body, but I don't want that one that gets ahead of itself. You point me somewhere, because I can't find it. You tell me and show me where the British Boxing Board of Control have done anything to Conor Benn besides ask him to appear before them. He failed a drugs test, a VADA test. Now, he's now contesting that via his very smart lawyers that are doing a number on the lesser lawyers of WBC and the lesser lawyers of perhaps UCAD. But if you can tell me, because I can't find it, and I've looked really deeply, I've done a deep dive into this, what is it exactly that the British Boxing Board of Control have done to you, Conor? Besides invite, you told them to do one. You sent them a cease and desist letter the moment they got test results. You stopped them from having a dialogue with you. You've torn your licence up. So what is it that Robert Smith and the British Boxing Board of Control have done to you that's prejudiced your position, besides say you've got to account for it? You've gone off to the WBC. Have you ever heard of a person judging you finding an alternate defence for you? They found an alternate defence for him.
To protect themselves.
Well, I don't know what the motivation's for.
So
we can all draw our conclusions.
Simon, you're telling us today that as far as you're concerned, you are no further forward in your thinking regards Ben than you were on the very day you and I sat in the studio and word came through around this time, the back of 12 noon, Conor Benn, it is being reported, has failed a drugs test and it's thrown the fight against Eubank Jr. into jeopardy.
I'm worried that Conor Benn is believing some of the things that he's being told by very clever people telling him how to say it, and ultimately suggesting that if he says things long enough and hard enough and over a significant period of time, people will subscribe to the view. Of course, if you sit there and go, well, someone can't be guilty if they're prepared to shout this loud, if they're prepared to call things out this loud, surely they can't be guilty. Why don't you go in front of the British... Okay, Conor, tell us. Just tell us, so we can all understand, what the British Boxing Board of No Control, as I call them, have done. What is it they've done that's disrespected you? What is it they've done that's what you give you a late decision? Should they have cancelled it early? Should they have stepped in after the first test and gone, fine, that fight's off? Yeah, I reckon they should have done, right? But the point is, what else have they done to stop you going through? Is there no fair process here?
Well, he might tell you if you spoke to him. You said at the beginning of the conversation he's a good lad. Maybe can you not give him the benefit of the doubt?
He's being controlled by his lawyers. His lawyers are telling him what he can and can't say. Well, that's a statement written by his lawyers, I suspect. And everything that's come out has been via his lawyers.
I spoke to him not that long ago, Simon. He was prepared to give us like a 15, 20 word statement.
You'll see I'm innocent.
Yeah, and continue to protest his
everybody in the sport, Jim, everybody that I know wants him to be innocent. Most people I've spoken to in the sport believe him not to be so. It's really simple. Go in front of the British Boxing Board of Control, because they're talking about going to the Court of Arbitration of Sport. You can't go to the Court of Arbitration of Sport until you've been sanctioned. You haven't even been sanctioned yet.
Yeah.
Stand in front of the British Boxing Board of Control, feel that you've been undone fairly, take it to CAS.
Yes.
That's your process.
Conor, if you're listening, mate, your statement went on, and it went on a fair bit. 1,124 words, but we're none the wiser.